Hello, Rank Squad. When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds or Aviator Nation, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand and brilliant marketing, but an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the businesses, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, who are home of the number one checkout on the planet. And the not so secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning that there are way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. So, if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. It's no secret, businesses that want to grow with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/ranks.
Playing with an idea for a side hustle, but just don't have the time to do it? Well, with Wix, you get the freedom to build a successful side business online while keeping your other priorities front and center. And don't worry if you don't have all the answers. Who does, right? Our chat-based AI can guide you through the process, creating a website that's as unique as you are, no matter what your field. From starting your part-time passion to growing it into your full-time career. Go to Wix.com to get started.
There are some things in life that just shouldn't be forgotten, like bringing your keys when you leave the house, setting your fantasy lineup, and most importantly, having Hidden Valley Ranch to watch the game. Especially if wings are on the menu. Those creamy, zesty Cool Ranch flavors take each spicy, savory bite to an unforgettable level. Hidden Valley Ranch, only serious about flavor.
This podcast is supported by Talkspace.
When my husband came home from his military deployment, readjusting was hard for all of us. Thankfully, I found Talkspace.
Talkspace provides professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatric providers online. Military members, veterans, and their dependents ages 13 and older can get fast access to providers, all from the privacy of their computers or smartphones.
I just answered a few questions online, and Talkspace matched me with a therapist. We meet when it's convenient for me, and I can message her anytime. It was so easy to set up, and they accept TRICARE. Therapy was going so well, my husband and I started seeing a couples therapist through Talkspace too.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, including TRICARE. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com/military. Go to Talkspace.com/military to get started today. That's Talkspace.com/military.
Hello, this is international football commentator Derek Ray, and you're listening to the Ranks FC podcast.
Hello, Rank Squad, and welcome to Ranks FC. It's your favourite transatlantic football podcast, back for another week. My name is Jack Collins, and I'll be your host today. And joining me all the way from San Diego, across that big stretch of water, it's only Mr. Dean Jones. How you doing, mate?
Oh, I'm okay, mate. I was a bit worried about you this morning when I woke up and got a message saying that you were a fitness doubt for the pod, because that doesn't happen. You don't miss games. You're Mr. Reliable. And I was like, oh, no Jack, no pod. Like, I don't know how to do this. So
Producing? Like, you on your own, me producing.
I mean, I can record the whole thing, but I don't know what to do with it. It just sits there on my laptop.
I was a fitness doubt this morning. I woke up in not a great way, but you know what? Over the course of the day, the Lemsips have gone in, the Cavonia's gone in, I had a nice mug of soup for lunch. And so you can probably hear the edge of my voice. But
yeah, we don't know if you lasted the full hour. We might have to cut it short.
We've had to, we've changed tack a little bit. I was going to do a big lead on what I was going to lead on relegations today, but actually I don't know if I've got the capacity. I don't have the facilities for that right now, big man. So we are changing tack. And actually it's a fun episode, I think, today. We're going to be talking about trophy droughts, and trophy droughts perhaps most likely to end this season in Premier League teams and beyond into Europe as well, off the back of the fact that obviously Newcastle United ended a 70-year domestic trophy drought at the weekend with that win over Liverpool in the Carabao Cup Final. So we're going to start there. And then in part two, we'll talk about some English teams who have a shot at ending their own trophy droughts. And then in part three, we'll look across Europe and see if there's anything else that might be fun and on as well. But I wanted to start with the Cup Final. Now, Dean, you and I did this in great detail on our Monday postbox on the Patreon. So I don't think that we necessarily need to get into the kind of ins and outs of the game. Obviously, that's a lot of water has passed under the bridge since that moment. But I did kind of want to talk briefly about what it means. I know you want to throw it forward as well, talk about what this might be as a launch pad for Newcastle United and what it might lead to. But I also just kind of wanted to reflect a little bit on what it means to the club, what it means to the city, what it means to the fan base, because there was a lot of emotion riding on this game. And a couple of years ago, when Newcastle United got to the Carabao Cup Final against Manchester United and ended up losing, it kind of felt like getting to Wembley was the big thing, right? Getting back to Wembley, getting back to a cup final felt like it was achieved. And actually that kind of played out on the pitch where Newcastle, yes, they were decimated with injuries and the like at the time, but didn't really get going at all in that game. This one felt different. This one, when the Toon Army arrived in London on Friday and they started filling up Covent Garden, Trafalgar Square. It wasn't the same as last time. It didn't feel like it was, okay, we've got here, we've achieved what we're looking to. This one felt different. And so it proved on the pitch as well, right? It felt like a performance where they had matured. They had learned the lessons of it a couple of years ago. There wasn't quite as much emotion attached to the players, even if the intensity was there. The fan base were able to rally them in the right way in the stadium. And then obviously the celebrations have been amazing. I mean, what did you make of it?
Yeah, I think Newcastle just feel like they're more ready to win. I think that's the best way to dress it up. There was all, the last time they got to Wembley a couple of years ago, it was all about hope and the occasion and, Trafalgar Square and getting down to London and having a party and let's see if we can do it. And obviously like having a reasonable chance at winning that final. But then not being, surprised at all when it didn't go their way. And it's not the first final that they've been to. I remember going years back to an FA Cup final between Newcastle and Man United, and Man United won 2-0. And I remember that day, like they were just unbelievable support. But this time, they still did all of those other things outside of the stadium. Yet there just felt like a bit more hope leading into the fixture. And I think like the PSG game was part of that. As I said on our Patreon show on Friday, like there definitely feels like there's more hope here, but it's still tainted by the fact that Liverpool's setback has come in the Champions League against Paris Saint-Germain on penalties. Like it's the finest margin against one of the best teams in the world right now. And that's what your hope is, that you can kind of make the most of that moment, make the most of tired legs and weary minds. And also hope that Alex Isak, your star man, is in good enough condition to get through enough of the game that he can make an impact. Unfortunately, on the day, it all came together. Newcastle set about their game plan. They showed absolutely no fear of Liverpool, and that was really important on the day. I think that was what probably pleased me most as a neutral, and getting the game that we got was that Eddie Howe and his coaching staff had set out to put Liverpool on the back foot and give them something to worry about. And it wasn't the best version of Liverpool they were up against. And, the timing of the first goal was just great as well. Obviously, when you go into half-time, I mean, it must have been annoying for some of the fans because they'd already been in the concourse getting their half-time beers and they feared they probably missed their big moment. But then Isak gets the second goal and gives them another moment, which is even more satisfying. I feared for them in the late stages because Liverpool being Liverpool, it kind of takes you back to when Man United used to do this. And once they get one goal, they always go and get another. But it wasn't going to be this time. Newcastle were just like, thou shall not pass.
10 minutes earlier, maybe it's a different story.
Yeah.
I think it was too little too late.
So just fantastic. And, I'm sure there are Geordies out there that have still not been home yet, still celebrating the win. Even I saw Ben Pringle, a former Fulham player, he was properly celebrating this moment. He was a player that joined Fulham at the same time as Tom Cairney. I actually thought he was going to be better than Tom Cairney for a very brief period. And he was in his Instagram story. It was brilliant to watch, him, a professional footballer, in this pub in his Newcastle shirt and just partying and getting among it all. And that was the thing. It doesn't matter if you're a current footballer and, got Alan Shearer doing the same thing in the director's box, going for it. You've got Ant and Dec doing it. You've got, kids doing it who are just learning to support Newcastle. You've got old men and women who have been waiting the 70 years for this next trophy lift. All the different types of people, all the different agony that they've all been through in various ways, and it's over. But it has to lead to something, Jack.
Yeah,
this isn't enough.
I know you want to talk about the future, but I did want to kind of just come back to this, what it means. And I think you've done a really good job there in just kind of setting it up. But for what it's worth, this tournament is sometimes belittled, right? And it's often seen as the fourth most important tournament for the biggest clubs. And that's fine, right? Because, that is the case. They have to have priority lists in terms of what they want to achieve. But it does go back to the point that this is still a major trophy. It's still a tournament that matters. And if someone else wins it, there is a sense, I think, with Newcastle that they were on the verge of doing something and have been for a little while. But when someone else wins it, someone else gets there and lifts it, how much that means. Newcastle today have announced that on the 29th of March, they're going to be doing a bus parade through the city to celebrate this trophy, right? At the moment, Dan Burn is being given the freedom of Northumberland. Eddie Howe is being given the freedom of Newcastle as a city. There's a park in Northumberland near where Dan Burn grew up in Blythe, which has renamed its main street Big Dan Burn Walk. The achievements here in terms of what this is and why it matters. And look, the whole, obviously, Dan Burn being from the area is a huge part of this. But I think that, there's this feeling that it's been so long. We talk about that 70-year drought. And I was reading a piece from Martin Farrer in the Guardian, and he was talking about the fact that in the 1974 FA Cup final, Newcastle played Liverpool, and that was a kind of thing where they were like, "Oh, there's been a while since we've won a trophy." But when they did that, they played Liverpool. They both had 11 major trophies, the two clubs.
Yeah.
And that day, things started to dissipate, and they never ever went back, right? That was the start of such a long road through ups and downs, through divisions, through heartbreak, through, bad owners, worse owners. It's been a very, very difficult period. They went through a period of being the great entertainers in the 90s, but never quite got over the line. They were the emotional club. There was so much about this and the kind of ride and roller coaster that Newcastle fans have been on, that this felt like the tide breaking. And I just wanted to give a moment to those celebrations because they have earned them. They have earned that kind of ability to have the release. And, so we're still reading stories about certain players, but I haven't been home yet. Jacob Murphy being like, I haven't woken up. I still feel like I'm walking around in a dream. But you're right in that there is this kind of feeling that I don't want to say that Newcastle need to kick on from here, because my point is that winning this trophy was so long, and hard earned, that just to sit back and celebrate it for a moment is one thing. But the club themselves and the players at the club will want this to be the start of something else.
Yeah, it's not enough. It's honestly not enough.
It's probably enough for fans. They're just happy.
But they're only happy for so long, mate. And, Newcastle aren't just a plucky team that have gone and done this. They are a top Premier League team who have been in the Champions League recently, have significant funding. And by that, I mean potentially the biggest backing in the world of football. A huge fan base. They're a one-team city. This isn't enough. This should be the start of something. I saw Birmingham City win the League Cup against Arsenal in 2011. I was at that game. And I saw journalists around me crying. I saw the fans, what it meant to them. For Birmingham, it led to nothing else. And that maybe is enough for Birmingham in that moment. 2 years later, Swansea City won this same trophy. They beat Bradford 5-0. It was a great moment in their history. Didn't really expect it to lead too much. They'd hoped that it would lead to more because at that period, Swansea were a good team. But ultimately, they've fallen away again. And that can't happen with Newcastle because Newcastle are more reflective of what Man City have done. And so if you think back now to Man City's rise, well, Man City went through their own trophy drought, and then it was a cup win that really turned things around. I was at the FA Cup final when Man City beat Stoke. It was 1-0. Yaya Toure scored it. And it was the same sort of moment. You had a couple of decades of hurt, a couple of decades of no trophies, like dropping down into the second, third tiers of English football. They'd been down there, but they were coming back. They had the backing and they suddenly had the belief. And now they suddenly had a trophy. And City, obviously from that moment, went on to dominate English football. The next season, they won the Premier League title, right? The big Aguero moment came 1 year after ending their trophy drought, winning the FA Cup. Newcastle needs something like that. This is not okay to just like have this on the board and then just like kind of disappear or just sit middle of the road again. This has to be the start of something. This has to become the norm of sorts. They at least have to get to more cup finals and they have to keep this team together. They have to go and give Alex Isak a big pay rise to make him the highest earner, to maybe even break their wage structure, to stay where they are and then grow on where they are, because they have the ability to do that. And when they did get this takeover and Mike Ashley was finally gone and there was talk, I don't know, of them signing like Mbappe and stuff like that and Harry Kane, it was a bit of a joke, but it was semi-serious talk about it from the people that were buying it. Like, this is where we want to be heading. And obviously at the time it was just not feasible. But now you're like, okay, like I can see how they might now start to grow this out. Like, they've actually got a cup. They can talk about getting into the Champions League again to players that they're going to try to sign. They can show people where they're heading with trophies as well. They've got the stadium and the fans. And I don't know, maybe Harry Kane ends up coming back to England and playing for Newcastle. Things like that. Like, that's not beyond reasoning to happen, right? So what do they aspire to? What is the next trophy that Newcastle go and win? And how hard do they now push this to go and make sure that, it's nothing like another 70 years of waiting for a trophy, which, as I said last week, for a club of their size and stature and, what they've been through, it's kind of embarrassing because it shouldn't get that far. And I was delighted for them that they've been able to put that behind them and the manner in which they did it. I always want to know, Jack, what comes next. I always want to know how you are then going to make this even better. And what is now the time frame to win another trophy first and foremost, whether it be FA Cup or League Cup? And when you're going to try and challenge for that Premier League title, I mean, they haven't been in a Premier League title race since all of this began. And it's a long time since they were obviously involved in that confrontation, if you like, with Sir Alex Ferguson's Man United to try and win the league under Kevin Keegan. A long time ago. So they've had those moments of hope, but they've never really actually had anything to cheer at the end of the day. They finally got that moment. They're still celebrating it. But they've got to finish this season strong, hit that transfer window hard from both ends in terms of keeping players and buying players. And next season, I want to see another trophy in the bag, or at least come close to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's about focusing. I think for me, it means Newcastle are obviously going to have another adventure next year in Europe. Now, where that's going to end up, whether that's Champions League, Europa League, Europa Conference League, we don't know yet. But there is going to be another adventure. And Newcastle struggled with doing that in a way that Villa have a little bit this season as well, right? And they didn't quite get that balance right. The squad wasn't quite big enough. It felt like it was stretched and ended up in quite a disappointing campaign for Newcastle United last year. So the first thing I would be looking at if I was Newcastle was, okay, we're going back to Europe. We are going to be in this conversation. We are going to, hopefully be in the Champions League as trophy winners. Hopefully we can look at players, and players will look at what we achieved there. They'll look at the players at the club and think, okay, that's something I would like to be a part of. But you also then have to kick that on, right? You have to be able to have a squad that's able to compete on multiple fronts. You have to have a squad that's, not going to go into the Champions League and then have to write off weekends in the Premier League. Are they going to be in a title race next year? I'd be surprised. But in terms of can they compete in the Champions League, stay within the European spots in the Premier League, and then have another go at either the Carabao Cup or potentially the FA Cup? Well, that's the next step, right? It's about building that squad out, building that balance. And I think that for me is the big question mark over whether Newcastle can spend in the summer, what they can do, how much money they have to play with, and where they are on PSR. Because last time it felt like they were hamstrung to a point where that was going to be almost impossible for them.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But they've got to find a way to go and actually improve the squad. So they have to now go and spend money and grow on this moment. And they will. Like they're certainly going to go for finally get a right-sided attacker that they seem to be looking for about 2 years.
Do you mean Murphy playing? That's integral.
Well, this is the thing, right? Like they've got a really strong first 11, and then the next tier is good, but is it good enough? And that's why they've got to be really ruthless now. It's a really difficult thing for Eddie Howe to do because he's built the unity and togetherness of getting to where he is right now. And to be fair, he's saved himself a bit with this trophy because, again, to compare it to Man City, he's a little bit in the Mark Hughes situation, right? Where we'll give you a try, but if you don't deliver soon, we're going to go and get a Mancini, someone a bit more sexy, a bit more proven. And so he's done that for now. So he gets another crack at this. He gets to continue the project, but he's going to have to make some tough calls on players that have done well for him and how he replaces them. Callum Wilson, he'll have to find a replacement for him. And do you go for someone who is genuinely like a backup sort of striker, or are you going again for an Ekitike, for example?
Bringing back Chris Wood, mate.
Yeah, bring back Chris Wood, the best goal scorer in the world. Obviously, Isak staying is fundamental, has to happen. Can you... Speaking to someone last week, and they said, one thing Newcastle wanted to do for a while is bring in almost a luxury midfielder, a Morgan Gibbs-White, James Maddison type player that they haven't really had. Can they go and, not saying they're going to sign either of those two players, but can they go and find someone like that? Can they go and get another centre-back so that Sven Botman missing isn't such a worry? These are big positions and big fills that need to be made, and they've got to find a way to make it happen if they're going to grow from here.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. But their trophy drought is over. All those long, long years of pain have been fulfilled by lifting silverware at Wembley. We're going to take a break there. When we come back, we're flipping our attention to the clubs yet to break their trophy drought and looking at who's most likely to end their own years of pain this season. Don't go anywhere. Hello, Rag Squad. When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds or Aviator Nation, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand and brilliant marketing, but an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the businesses, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, who are home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning that way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going... So, if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. It's no secret, businesses that want to grow with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/ranks.
There are some things in life that just shouldn't be forgotten, like bringing your keys when you leave the house, setting your fantasy lineup, and most importantly, having Hidden Valley Ranch to watch the game. Especially if you're having pizza. Those creamy, zesty, Cool Ranch flavors take each cheesy, melty bite to an unforgettable level. Hidden Valley Ranch. Only serious about flavor.
Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But DC politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
Welcome back to Ranks AFC, where it's time to get into our ranking of teams who are likely or most likely to break their trophy droughts this season. Dean's going to take us through a couple of names in England, and in the next part, I'm going to take our focus over a little bit to Europe as well. A couple of really interesting sides getting towards the latter end of tournaments there. But let's start with a load of Premier League teams, shall we, Dean?
Yeah, look, we've got the FA Cup quarterfinals coming up, and it's a fantastic opportunity for teams to mirror what Newcastle have just done in the Carabao Cup, because so many of them are just craving a trophy. The one team that are not and that are favourites to go and win the FA Cup are Manchester City. I mean, you could call it a trophy drought, seeing as they haven't won one since last season. But
yeah, it might be slightly disingenuous.
by recent standards, it's actually a drought. But it's feasible that Man City actually end this season with an FA Cup and then the Club World Cup, in which case their fans will argue they've had a better season than Liverpool. So we'll address that as and when we get to it.
Be wrong with that, just so we're clear.
But they're up against Bournemouth. Bournemouth obviously would love a trophy. Other ties that are coming up: Preston North End against Aston Villa, Brighton against Nottingham Forest, and Fulham against Crystal Palace. Like, you don't get this. You don't get this sort of opportunity at a quarter-final stage in FA Cup to look at it and be like, do you know what? Like, everyone's cheering on Bournemouth, just being like, please knock them out. Please beat Man City. Like, because even though Man City aren't what they were, you don't want to play them in a Wembley final. Like, going into that game, it's just not going to be as much fun as it would be to play against any of the other teams. It's important to point out here that there's a difference between a trophy drought and just never winning trophies. So I don't know that I can say that Fulham are in a trophy drought, because they've never won one apart from the Intertoto Cup.
This is it. Like, if you're in the Sahara Desert, you're not like, oh, it's a drought. It's just a desert. There's no water ever. It's only a drought if it dries up, right? That's what a drought means. So there's four teams there, right, who've never won a major trophy: Crystal Palace, Brighton, Hove Albion, Fulham, and Bournemouth. Now, it's been a long, long time since others have won trophies. PNE were obviously a big old force in the early days, but have kind of drifted away since then. But I would say that there is a difference. I think you're right. And it's okay, because we're going to have to discuss a variety of teams in different ways. And it still makes it very, very exciting. Someone winning their first ever major trophy would be an amazing thing. And, you know, that's close to what we were discussing on the podcast a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about clubs most likely to win their first ever Premier League title. You know, that's almost a different conversation. So I would say that you're probably right in kind of not necessarily excluding them. And this isn't to say that, I don't know, Forest are more likely to win the FA Cup than Brighton, because I think that game's pretty 50-50, despite the fact that Forest won 7-0 against Brighton a couple of weeks ago. You know, Fulham Palace, one of them is going to be in a semi-final. And that means that someone's going to have a shot at being in a Wembley final for that, you know, for that first ever trophy. Those things are amazing. They're incredible stories. They're not droughts. So I think that we're probably, for the most part anyway, going to exclude them and talk about teams who have won trophies in the past and who are looking to end that barren spell, that dry spell without one.
Yeah, like Preston actually have way more pedigree for winning cups than Fulham or Brighton or Bournemouth. But obviously, you are talking about going back to 1938 or something since they last actually did it. So that is a proper drought. But
pre-war.
But given current status, Preston aren't expecting to go and do this, but a hell of a story if they do. So I'm going to rank from 3 to 1 of teams that are in a trophy drought and have opportunity to end that this season following Newcastle's footsteps. And at 3, I am going with Nottingham Forest. They do have an opportunity. It is a good one, and they're a very good team. But they've got a tough quarterfinal, like you say. Like Brighton away in the quarterfinal is difficult, and it is a 50-50 game. And I couldn't call which way that one's going to go. Might even get decided in like penalties or something, because there's not really a lot between those two teams. And the other thing that I just I'm slightly concerned about with Forest actually going on to end a trophy drought is the fact that they are 3rd in the Premier League table. They have a great chance of retaining that position and finishing in 3rd position in the Premier League table. And that is an unbelievable achievement. It qualifies them for the Champions League next season. And they don't have a deep squad. They're a little bit Leicester City in the fact that you can name Nottingham Forest's 11 basically off the top of your head right now. Like most people would get at least 9 of those names, just reel them off, bang, 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 bang. Like you could probably do now with the Leicester City team that went and won the league that year. So Forest's squad really isn't that deep. Like, I don't know, 14, maybe 15 players that are going to be called upon week after week. And they've got a really good fixture list in the Premier League that means that they can actually do this. And so I'm not sure how they balance it out. And I'm not sure that I actually see them winning 3 cup games here to go on and actually end a trophy drought. And I don't even know that it's of utmost importance that they do. I think that the success of this season within the Premier League, to get to where they are, to be ahead of the teams they are, and only be trailing Liverpool and Arsenal right now, and even be chasing Arsenal down, potentially in the final weeks, who knows? Remarkable situation to be in. The flame that's been reignited at that club, is insane.
But I find it really intriguing. So if I was a Forest fan, what would I be looking at here? It's easy for me to say this. We discuss this with Fulham quite a lot, that people are like, oh, would you rather get into European competition or get to the FA Cup Final? I'm like, FA Cup Final. That's amazing. But considering where Forest are, it's what a wonderful position to be in. What a wonderful position for a fan to be in, especially from such an unexpected start. But I wonder if you offered it right now, you said Champions League football guaranteed next year, or FA Cup Final and a shot of winning that trophy, what Forest fans would pick? Because I think we'd probably be surprised at how many people would go with the FA Cup Final.
Well, it's because of the moment, right? And you just seen what Newcastle have done. You're not going to celebrate finishing 3rd in the league in quite the same way.
No, I think those celebrations were amazing. Look at the celebrations at the City Ground when they beat Man City the other week. That felt like a big step towards that. The place was bouncing. But equally, it's been 35 years, 1990, since Nottingham Forest won a trophy. They won the League Cup, won 1-0 against Oldham Athletic in 1990, which is a blast from the past in so many different ways. But that 35 years has been, again, full of, I was going to say ups and downs, but quite a lot of downs for Nottingham Forest. They've bounced around in obscurity for a long period of that. And now they find themselves back in the conversations at the top table. Not maybe from a how big the club is perspective, but from a where they are in the league perspective. And I wonder whether, you take advantage of those moments. Obviously Leicester was a very, very special case, but I think the thing that kind of dialed it all home was the FA Cup win a couple of, years later. You're like, wow, are they going to be here for a while? And then, look where Leicester City are now, having spent a season back down in the Championship, worked their way back and very much on their way back to the Championship again. It's interesting how fleeting these moments can be. And I wonder if you said that, you said, oh, you go to the Champions League next year, and for us, do we have the squad for that? Have we got the capability to rotate in that manner? Is that going to put us in a conversation where we're a little bit uncomfortable in the league? And I'm not saying it is. I'm just kind of spitballing out loud, whereas a trophy is for life.
Yeah, and to be honest, a Forest fan listening to this might be shouting at me saying, I don't care if we finish 3rd. We can probably finish 5th It doesn't matter. Like, they don't have to finish third.
Getting in the Europa League would like, you'd offer them a Conference League spot at the start of the season. Now, maybe from this position, I know
from this position, that'll feel like
But like, if you'd offered that at the start of the season, Forest fans would be like, "That's amazing. We're going any European tour you asked for." And
100%
brings Europe with it as well. I don't know. I think I would have had Forest second in this ranking, but I take your point.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the drought, like Nottingham Forest. Previous European Cup winners in 1979 and 1980, even beyond my lifetime, to be fair. But more recently, a bit more recently, anyway, they've won the League Cup in 1990. So they've got some heritage in the game, right? And they're a traditionally strong club, and once you go to the City Ground, you realise what that club stands for. And it's kind of a surprise that they were down on their luck for quite so long, because this was a sleeping giant, and it's back. But in terms of a trophy, I think to win it from here, I would just have them below the next two teams that I'm going to win. And to be honest with you, part of that's because of expectation. And at number 2, it's not an FA Cup team, it's a different team. It's Tottenham Hotspur. And their season rests on the Europa League, and Ange Postecoglou's job rests on winning the Europa League. And that's why I view it a bit differently to Nottingham Forest, because of the importance of winning this cup. Because on the back of, they are very much in the same bracket as of Newcastle. They would consider, most Tottenham fans would consider themselves a bigger club, to be honest, than Newcastle, because of they'd say in terms of global fan base and in terms of like traditions in the game and trophies throughout time, that they would be a bigger club, I think. But they haven't been able to back that up. They're very flaky. And I don't think anyone's really got that much confidence in them actually going on to win the Europa League. But in terms of significance, it's much more important than Nottingham Forest doing it. And given the pathway that they've got, with the team that they've got, it is actually doable. Like, there's obviously, like, it's going to take some consistency of level of performance that we haven't really seen so far under Postecoglou. But their next Europa League game is on the 10th of April. So they've got this international break, and then they've got a couple of games, and then they play Frankfurt at home in the first leg, and then they have the away leg a week later. Like, Frankfurt are a good team, but they're not unbeatable. Like, Tottenham should be capable of beating Frankfurt over 2 games. And more importantly, they do now have their squad available to them. Like, Postecoglou has waited most of the season for this moment. It's the reason he's still in a job, because Levy's like, okay, the team's back. Like, your record in the Premier League is woeful. You're lucky to be in a job, even with all the injuries, because losing this many games across one season is unacceptable. It's so poor. But here we go. You're in the quarterfinals of a European competition that we can win. Like, they can win it. And I think they just got that bit more on it for me than Nottingham Forest, in terms of how much rests on this for everyone and everything. So do I trust them to go and do it? Absolutely not. But I think they can do it, and they, in a way, should do it.
Yeah, I mean, I would have had Spurs third. I would have had them below Forest. I think the likelihood of Spurs winning the Europa League is lower than that of Forest winning the FA Cup. And I don't really mean that with any sort of real disrespect. I just think that actually this route is quite hard. Like, from here on in, they played pretty well in that second leg against AZ Alkmaar, who were a decent side in their own right? But you look at it and you think, well, this is an Eintracht side who are currently in the Champions League places in the Bundesliga, who have moved on really well from the loss of Omar Marmoush, which a lot of people thought was going to be the kind of thing that took this season shuddering to a halt. They've done okay. They switched formations a little bit. There's some really talented players in here. You spoke about Ekitike earlier. He's the man leading the line. There's balance across the midfield. Mario Götze is reborn. I think, considering their performances this season under Dino Topmoller, it feels like this is an uphill battle for Spurs, especially with the second leg away from home. If the first leg had been away from home, they got out of there alive, I think I would have been like, yeah, okay, fair enough. And it's not impossible because, as you say, Eintracht are not an unbeatable unit, but they're a good unit. And right now, they feel like a better unit than Tottenham Hotspur do. And then if they get through that, the chances are they're going to be playing Lazio, who have been excellent over the course of this season. They've dropped off a little bit recently, but I still fancy that Lazio with this and one mind very much on winning this competition. It does feel like this has been their kind of singular focus. I feel like are going to be a very, very difficult opposition for anyone over the course of 2 legs. And then, I mean, I think it's likely to be Athletic Club in the final at this point. That is an incredibly difficult run of games for Tottenham Hotspur to go and win.
Yeah. I don't know if you've heard of this stat, but Ange Postecoglou always wins a trophy in his second season.
He always has won a trophy in his second season, I would add.
He's never needed that to happen more. So it's a thing, and there's still the possibility. And so let's see if he can back it up. Of course, like Postecoglou's game management across this season is less than convincing, and his status as Tottenham manager is hanging by a thread and does rest on them getting through this Frankfurt game at the very least. If they go out to Frankfurt, I can't see him surviving. Even beyond that, he's in a little bit of a struggle, but he's got a chance here to kind of save his reputation a bit. He looked a couple of weeks ago like he was getting a bit more life back in him and he was making his jokes again, but
yeah, it did seem to perk up for a little bit.
But then at the weekend, like the life had been drained out of him again by his own supporters, and that's not a great place to be in. And I do wonder, like, how that feeds into the motivation. I mean, it must be a very strange feeling when you're striving to win a cup, and like how you celebrate a cup when your fan base is like turned against you so heavily. Like, if Tottenham win that cup, are you like stood there with the trophy? After the final, holding it aloft in one hand with your middle finger up at the section of the fan base with the other, saying, there you go, thanks for your support, I've done it. Or are you just like accepting that it's part and parcel of football and that fan frustration is a thing and Tottenham fans bear it more than most, I guess. But yeah, so they're second ahead of Nottingham Forest because I do expect more from Tottenham than I do from Nottingham Forest when it comes to these things. But at number 1 is Aston Villa.
Okay.
They've got 2 trophy opportunities, Jack. They've got the Champions League.
They do.
And they've also got the FA Cup. So there you go. There's 2 opportunities. Obviously, winning the Champions League is not expected, and they've got PSG in the next round over 2 legs, which, as Liverpool learned, is a less than enviable task. So that's not going to be easy. But in the FA Cup, they've got Preston North End in the quarterfinals, which means they've got 1 foot into the semi-finals because they should win that game. And that's not out of lack of respect. That's just how football works. Like, they are expected to win that game. And behind Manchester City, Aston Villa are the favourites to go on and win this trophy. So I do have high expectations for them. I do believe that they are probably the only club in this list of remaining FA Cup teams that would go into a Wembley final with Manchester City and expect to win it. I believe that they've got to the point where they could do that. And more than that, well, part of the reason for that, to be honest, is because of their manager. Unai Emery's trophy record shows that it can be done. He's built a reputation of one of Europe's most successful managers. Obviously, that's mainly been in European competitions. With Sevilla, obviously had 3 trophy lifts in the Europa League, and that's what everybody harps back to, and especially the fact that he also did it with Villarreal when he beat Man United in the final in 2021. With PSG, he won the league, he won the cup, won the League Cup, so he knows how to do it on those big occasions. His rise with Aston Villa has been absolutely phenomenal since coming in 2022. There's no trophies yet to show for it, but the improvement in every area of the pitch, in every player that he's kept on or brought in, has been remarkable. It's become a little bit of a rehabilitation home, for players like Asensio and Rashford, and getting those guys going again. I think that they've welcomed that. It wouldn't surprise me if that's a trend that continues. It actually made me laugh the other day when they were linked with Isco, because I was like, this really is a rehabilitation home. Like they're seeing like a flash of something in someone and being like, oh, we could take that and we could do this with it, and I could like redesign this into something else that fits my team. Emery's a smart man.
He is a smart man.
But yeah, 10 major trophies he's got as a manager, right? And that is something that has to give Aston Villa fans hope that their own trophy drought does end at this point. I mean, this is a team that, again, has strong traditions in the game. They haven't won a league title since 1981. They did win the League Cup in 1996 and 1994. Haven't won the FA Cup since 1957. But, 96 isn't that long ago, like by standards of most.
It's 29 years ago.
Say. Yeah, so for you, it's almost a lifetime. For me, I do remember it. But I think this is very, very possible. I think it's very possible. As I say, they're basically in the semi-final with the draw that they've been given. I'm sorry to disrespect Preston like that, but it's just the way football works. And
Robbie Brady proves you wrong, it's going to be quite something.
I don't have any problem with them getting knocked out, by the way. But it's there for them, man. And if anyone's going to end a trophy drought this season, it's Aston Villa.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think that if I was looking at this, kind of fundamentally knowing what Emery's record is like in cup competitions and seeing that a couple of weeks ago when City looked like they were just about on the turn and things were just starting to get better, I was like, oh, here we go again. They're just going to go and win the FA Cup. But I think in my head, I think Villa are favourites. That sounds nuts.
Yeah. No, I mean, it can be. It can be true.
I think that they are. I think what we've seen for them in cup competitions, what we've seen from Emery in cup competitions, yes, a lot of it's been in Europe, but over the course of these games, I think these are the games that the Villa are going to really up the ante for. And yes, they've struggled this year coming off the back of Champions League games. And, I think that's why they are where they are on the table. But this is a very, very good side, a very well-balanced side, a well-put-together side.
Well, it's the best team they've had in years. Years and years and years.
And I think, the impact that Rashford and Asensio have had since coming in January has been huge. And I think that is the kind of thing that you go, okay, is that what's going to push Villa over the line here? Is that the thing that's actually going to drive them to the point that they have a trophy on the line, as we say, for the first time in 29 years? I'm with you. I don't think Villa are going to win the Champions League, but I do think they've got a very, very good shot winning the FA Cup.
Yeah. And I think it's been kind of a long time coming. There was the Martin O'Neill years when actually I was covering Villa quite closely and went into Europe with them and stuff, and I followed them around a bit. And those were like really promising times, but they don't compare to this. Like, this is something special.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I think it's been such a good few years for Emery and Villa together, and actually to culminate that with a trophy would be something special as well. And weirdly, I sort of do think that maybe, in the Conference League last year, I know that they had one eye on the Champions League and getting back in there, but with Emery at the helm, that they might look at that as a missed opportunity, considering all the things that were at their disposal at that point. And obviously we'll see, but I think they have a great chance again here to end that drought. Although I'm sure they'll be like, well, next year will be 30 years. That would also be a good time to do it on the anniversary. So we'll see how we go. All right, we're going to park the Premier League teams there. And when we come back after the break, we're going to talk about some of the sides in Europe with the opportunity to do just the same. Don't go anywhere. Hello, Rag Squad. When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds or Aviator Nation, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand and brilliant marketing, but an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the businesses, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, who are home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning that there are way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. So, if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. It's no secret, businesses that want to grow with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/ranks.
There are some things in life that just shouldn't be forgotten, like bringing your keys when you leave the house, setting your fantasy lineup, and most importantly, having Hidden Valley Ranch to watch the game. Especially if you're having pizza. Those creamy, zesty, Cool Ranch flavors take each cheesy, melty bite to an unforgettable level. Hidden Valley Ranch. Only serious about flavor.
Welcome back to Ranks FC, and sick note himself, Jack Collins, who's jumped off his deathbed to be with us today, is going to run us through some teams on the continent of Europe that are looking to end some droughts. I don't know as much about this, I've got to admit, Jack. I wouldn't even know who the biggest supported clubs, who the most traditional clubs would be right now that are in a trophy drought. So I'm looking forward to you giving us the rundown on who could do it.
Yeah, risen like Lazarus to do this bit. So this is the kind of thing that will get me out of bed, even when I am sick. A couple of honourable mentions to start with. One, Rio Ave are a Portuguese side from Vila de Conde, which is just north of Porto, and they have never won a trophy. They were formed in 1939, 89 years ago. They are in the Taça de Portugal semi-final, where they have Sporting over two legs. Do you know what? Sporting have been much better of late, right? And actually have turned things around a little bit. But I do wonder if this is a season where someone weird comes from nowhere to win this trophy. And I think with the second leg at home, they might well have a shot at getting into their first final in a long time, but actually winning their first silverware ever. So just a word for the boys from Vila de Conde. There's also in the Netherlands, Go Ahead Eagles, who are in a final against AZ Alkmaar. Now, they're having a really good season. They're about 7th in the Eredivisie, if my maths are correct. They've had some really good wins. They beat PSV, who admittedly are having a wobble, but in the semi-final. And whilst AZ will be favourites to win that, their trophy drought is nowhere near long enough to justify putting them into this ranking.
Okay.
Go Ahead Eagles haven't won a trophy since 1933. 92 years ago, before it became the Eredivisie, they won the Dutch National League Championship. They haven't won a trophy since. And they are in a final, a one-off final, against a team that isn't in the traditional big three of Dutch football. They might never have an opportunity like this in the next decade. And considering that they are having a very well put together season, some big results of late, and that they drew 2-2 with AZ earlier in the season in the Eredivisie, that one looks like is a potential to be on as well. Yeah. Slightly less convincing are Stade Reims, who haven't won a trophy since 1966. Now, they probably are going to be in the French Cup Final, the France, and they are probably going to play PSG, which is why their chances are not as hot as some of the other teams that you're putting here. But they probably will be in a final. In 90 minutes, anything can happen. So I just wanted to give a couple of shouts out to those guys. My actual ranking is a 3-2-1 as well. And at 3, I'm going to put Fiorentina. 2001, the last time that Fiorentina won a trophy. 24 years since that was the case.
Wow.
Some pretty special scenes. But Fiorentina have obviously got to a lot of finals in recent years. So they've lost 2 Conference League finals in a row, first to West Ham and then to Olympiacos. They have lost a couple of Coppa Italia finals. And this is a little bit presumptuous, perhaps, because we are just at the quarterfinal stages of the Conference League. But I think that there is a sense, there's kind of been a sense all season that Chelsea were going to walk the Conference League, right? You know, that the squad depth was there, that the whole thing was there. But actually, do you believe that anymore? And I don't mean this with any disrespect.
That's a good point.
Chelsea should win the Conference League, right? They are the best side in it. But we are watching this Chelsea side who are pretty good at home still. You will say they don't lose very many games at home. They've only lost twice all season at Stamford Bridge. So I kind of expect them to get to the final. They've also avoided most of the highest seeds in terms of that. But actually, in a one-off game, you know, we talked about this on Monday and I was kind of reading off a few Chelsea perspectives from fans of people being like, you know, we used to go into big games and be like, yeah, we'll just win. We'll just win. We know that we'll put up a performance. We know that we'll turn up. I don't know if you can say that for this.
Well, you definitely can't say that. No. We definitely can't say that. But
earlier on in the Conference League, you kind of just assumed that, everyone else was faltering as well. The big favourites, who were also in the competition. Fiorentina ended up third in the group stage. Betis, who are, actually finding themselves in a bit of form now, are on Betis and Fiorentina both on the other side of the draw to Chelsea. And I think that's probably why Fiorentina are third here rather than second, because at the moment, if they played Betis, I think that's pretty much a toss-up. I think it's a 50-50 in the Jack Collins derby. But I think when you're kind of looking at what Fiorentina have done recently, like, albeit this Juve side are definitely not the teams we've come to expect, the 3-0 win at the weekend was so dominant and so brilliant as a performance. Fiorentina have pulled themselves back into that European conversation after they started the season so well, had a drop-off. They've had some decent results of late. And the win over Panathinaikos in the second leg of their round of 16 game in the Conference League was, as composed as I've seen them in this competition for a little while. So I think that there is probably this sense that Fiorentina have another shot at going to the Conference League final. They will have to get through Betis, and I think that is going to be a tricky game. We've talked about Betis' kind of Jekyll and Hyde thing again. Again, it's not been particularly long since Betis have won a trophy. Otherwise, they would be in this conversation, but they won the Copa del Rey a couple of years ago, so they probably don't exist within this. I still think the most likely final at this point is Chelsea-Betis. But I don't think it's wild to suggest that Fiorentina have a shot of getting there. And if they do get there, there's every chance in a one-off game they could beat this Chelsea side with how inconsistent Chelsea have been.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I mean, the only thing, I guess, when Mikel Arteta was talking about Chelsea's attack the other day as being the best in the Premier League, I mean, I know quite a few people scoffed at it, but I'm like, if he's saying that, he must mean it to some extent in terms of like what he's got to.
Yeah, it obviously depends who's back, etc. Yeah. I do take that point, but I just feel like, the momentum that Chelsea had in the first half of the season is gone. And again, they still should win this. They still should be favourites to win it. But I don't think they're as overwhelming favourites as they were in December.
No. That's fair.
Okay, let's go to my number 2, where I'm going to go to Germany to take a look at Stuttgart, who are not having a brilliant season. Last year was obviously wonderful. They're mid-table in the Bundesliga. They ended up with an early exit from the Champions League. It hasn't been perfect, but they've been pretty good in the cup. And they have a shot here. They're in the DFB Pokal semi-finals. They're against RB Leipzig. We know that the Bayern are obviously out of that competition. And some of the performances from Stuttgart of late have kind of given me a little bit more hope that they might have a shot at ending their own one. They've, their performance against Leverkusen at the weekend, yes, they collapsed late on, but generally, over the course of the game, I thought they played really well. I thought that they put up a decent fight against Bayern a few weeks ago as well. They beat Dortmund a couple of weeks back. They've had a few very impressive results over the course of the season. Now, they've been nowhere near consistent enough, but they're 2 games away from trophy. Yeah. And it's been, 18 years since they were able to lift one. That was actually the league title, which is kind of mad when you think about it. And you think about what's happened since then, and they've bounced between the divisions and all of those things. But under Sebi Hoeneß, they're learning, they're growing. They lost a lot of players in the summer, and it's been a year of rebuilding and trying to kind of get everyone back in the same page. But they're still here, against the Leipzig side, who, again, have been a little bit all over the place all season. It doesn't feel like, the DFB Pokal has like an obvious place to go, because whilst Leverkusen will be favourites, and rightly so, I think we've seen the first kind of chinks and weaknesses in what Leverkusen have been. Those performances against Bayern were pretty damning. If the result wasn't damning enough, I think the performances were worse. And that might just open this competition up. It's been, they have our mini Bielefeld, who are a 3rd-tier side in the semi-finals. So you put quite a lot of money on Leverkusen making it through to the final of the DFB Pokal. But whoever wins that other semi-final between Stuttgart and Leipzig, I think will fancy their own chances of actually lifting a trophy. Now, again, Leipzig not in this conversation because they've won it recently. Yeah. But I think if Stuttgart get through that, they will look at this as a huge opportunity against the Leverkusen side, who have been nowhere near as good as they were last year. And that, I think, is a fun place for them to be, for us to be, and for Stuttgart fans to be, with kind of 2 games to get there. It's not like these are 2-legged semi-finals. It's straight up, get there, get to Berlin and see what happens when you get there. And I don't want to rule it out. I think Sebi Hoeneß is a brilliant coach. And I think that this is a real opportunity for him to kind of get off the mark from a silverware perspective as a young manager as well.
Yeah, that's a good shout, and definitely a fun one. Yeah, these are the kind of storylines and clubs that you want to see involved in this kind of narrative. I'm impressed so far, mate. I'm enjoying where we're at, but I'm kind of intrigued at who's number one.
Well, number one is Bologna. Bologna won their last trophy in 1974, so 51 years ago, and have been, there or thereabouts in Serie A most of the time since. They're a pretty stable Serie A club, but not really round of the houses in terms of winning anything. They did have a couple of good goes at the Intertoto Cup. They won the Intertoto Cup, so just like the teams who have actually, Fulham beat Bologna in an Intertoto Cup final at Loftus Road.
They did indeed.
Yeah, so I've always kept an eye on them since. I'd love to say, but that's not true. I have, however, been to the Dallara, and I have watched this Bologna side play. It's a really, really cool stadium, like one of those places that just sort of feels football-y. It has the clock tower on the side of it. It's a really cool place to watch a game of football. And Bologna are going really well. They are fourth in Serie A, behind the big three this season. To get there last weekend, they beat Lazio 5-0 in perhaps their most complete display of the season. They've beaten Milan in the last couple of weeks as well. And yes, Milan have been a little bit off it. But over the course of this campaign, they beat Atalanta in the Coppa quarters. And what we've seen, Vincenzo Italiano, who obviously took over from Thiago Motta, left Fiorentina, was the man that took Fiorentina to final after final after final. Now, he didn't get over the line in any of them. But he was very, very good at getting to finals. And I think that this might just open up. So Bologna have Empoli in the Coppa Italia semi-final. Empoli are fighting relegation at the moment, and I think are going to have more than one eye on trying to survive in Serie A. And the other semi-final is a Derby della Madonnina between Inter and Milan. Now, if Inter win that, then obviously Bologna's chances of winning a trophy diminish.
Yeah.
But the only place that Milan have been absolutely any good whatsoever this season is in the derby. We've seen it a couple of times, snatching draws from nothing, snatching the win in the Supercoppa Italia. These are the games that Milan have actually been able to turn up in. And in a two-legged affair, I have no idea what's going to happen in that one. But I do think that when you kind of look at what has happened this year, Bologna have also been to San Siro and drawn 2-2 with Inter this season already. They've put together some really impressive performances on the road. I feel like this is the kind of side that has grown over the course of the year, because Bologna are another one, a little bit like Stuttgart, where last year had a brilliant year, obviously got into the Champions League, and then a lot of players left, manager pinched by Juventus. You see the likes of Xerxes leave, who was such a crucial part to the way they did, Calafiori leaving as well. But also they were missing Ferguson in the middle, Lewis Ferguson, who was, the heart of the midfield for long parts of it because he did his ACL at the end of last year.
Right.
And he's back in this side now. They have got a new manager in who's taken his time to get the blueprint together, exactly what he wants his side to look like. And suddenly you're kind of watching them going, yeah, you know what? This is a very, very good unit. Dan and Doy on the left wing is having an absolutely sublime season. Orsolini feels like he's refound his touch again after all those, years where people thought he was going to leave time and time again. They brought in Juan Miranda from Betis at the end of last season. Sam Berkhammer has stepped up again. It's not been the smoothest of sailings, from the start of the season, but the way that they've clawed themselves back into the Champions League race, as I say, currently fourth here, they've already got results against Milan and against Inter this season. If they get to a cup final, I don't think they will fear it. And I think that's a great place for them to be.
This is sneaky good, isn't it? This is sneaky good. I like it.
They're having a sneaky good season. Yeah. Good season.
Yeah, I like this a lot. Wow. Good one, mate. I like that a lot. A good list.
There you go. So Bologna, Stuttgart and Fiorentina with honourable mentions for Rio Ave in Portugal, Go Ahead Eagles in the Netherlands and Stade Reims in France.
Mate, you need to go ahead and get to bed. You've done it. You've done your shift, mate. You can get back to your recovery now.
Yeah, my voice is starting to go. I can feel it at the end of it. Go ahead, Jack. Get yourself off to bed. And with that, I think we are probably going to end this show. We hope you've enjoyed it. Something a little bit different this week as we head into an international break. We'll be having a think about whether next week's episode is an international one or
trophy droughts, England, Netherlands, that sort of.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I did think that when I was talking about Stade Reims, they were like 1966. I was like, I know someone else's trophy drought.
Honestly, I thought about throwing England into the mix, but I was like, I'm not doing this to myself.
No, you don't need that. I don't need that. And we all don't need that. And the Thomas Tuchel reign is about to get started. And we will see what England look like under Thomas Tuchel with Big Dan Burn as captain. That's the answer. That's what England have been missing for the last couple of years. Right. On that note, I think it's probably time for us to say goodbye. So all that's left for me to do is say thank you very much to Mr. Dean Jones.
Cheers, mate.
I've been Jack Collins. This has been Ranks FC. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, ranking likely trophy droughts to end this season. We hope you've enjoyed it. No Champions League takeaway this week, obviously, but Doogie and Sam will be back with a truth on Friday, where they're going to be talking about Alexander Isak and all the possible routes for his future, whether that's staying at Newcastle or moving onwards. It's one that we're all looking forward to getting in the can. Thank you so much. We hope you enjoy the international break, and whether you are going to watch every game or watch none of them and just take a rest before club football returns, hope you enjoy yourselves. Stay safe, stay well. Thank you for listening, Rank Squad. Peace. Hello, Rank Squad. When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds or Aviator Nation, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand and brilliant marketing, but an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the businesses, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, who are home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not so secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning that there are way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. So, if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. It's no secret, businesses that want to grow with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/ranks.
With leading networking and connectivity, advanced cybersecurity, and expert partnership, Comcast Business helps turn today's enterprises into engines of modern business, powering the engine of modern business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply.
There are some things in life that just shouldn't be forgotten, like bringing your keys when you leave the house, setting your fantasy lineup, and most importantly, having Hidden Valley Ranch to watch the game. Especially if you're having pizza. Those creamy, zesty, cool ranch flavors take each cheesy, melty bite to an unforgettable level. Hidden Valley Ranch, only serious about flavor.